All right, thank you everyone for joining me week after week for these live internet studies, which include the Matthew 9:14 through 17 study, as well as the Shema, exploring the Shema discussions on the issues of Trinity study that's going to kick in about 30 minutes from now. So let's dive right back into our Matthew 9 study. Remember, as you can see on my screen, I've got this passage pulled up from the book of Matthew. It's labeled in the ESV as a question about fasting, but it might not all be about fasting. Let me read the passage for you real quick, and then we'll jump into a new pastor's commentary tonight. The passage reads this way, starting in verse 14 of Matthew chapter 9. Then the disciples of John came to him, speaking of Yeshua, saying, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" Verse 15, and Jesus said to them, "Can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast." Continuing in verse 16, "No one puts a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch tears away from the garment, and a worse tear is made." Verse 17, "Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. If it is, the skins burst, and the wine is spilled and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved." End quote. What we've been doing in this study is working our way through a commentary that I put together. You can see on my screen right now. And we've already looked at examples from gotquestions.org, an apologetics ministry. We looked at an example from Pastor John MacArthur. We looked at an example from Pastor John Piper. And so now we're ready to look at an example from Pastor David Guzik. And I chose these examples specifically because they are easily web accessible. I could have chosen commentary pastors that you find only in books, or expository volumes of Bibles that are really, really thick, or pastors that you only find if you buy Bible software like Accordance or something like that. But instead, I chose pastors that are not only well known and well trusted, but are easily accessible to anyone with internet access, right? Pastor Guzik, Pastor MacArthur, Got Questions, and so these are people you can just Google search them. So let's go here. Let's start now with the example from Pastor David Guzik. So let's just pick up my own commentary right where you see it on the screen. These are my words. "I'd like to include just one more traditional, well-known, well-respected Christian pastor before I turn to a popular Messianic Jewish author, and then to Tim Hegg, who's one of my favorites, to provide some concluding thoughts." And as you guys already know, we're talking about specifically this topic of Judaism versus Christianity. Are Judaism and Christianity incompatible with one another? Did Christianity come onto the scene to replace the aging and worn out religion known as Judaism? The working title is Judaism v. Christianity. And the idea is that when you read through that parable or story that we just read in Matthew, Yeshua is obviously trying to explain some incompatibilities between something older and something newer, right? The idea of fasting for one reason versus fasting for a different reason. The idea of an old patch and a new patch and an old piece of cloth, an old clothing, or old wine and new wineskins, or old wineskins and new wine. We can kind of apply the logic back and forth. And so clearly, Yeshua is giving us a principle of something that's incompatible with something else. But our job as Bible students is to ascertain what is the incompatibility, and does it require throwing something out and replacing it with something else, right? We haven't even really talked about this yet, but let me just kind of give you some hints. If you read through the story that we just read, which shows up in two other Gospels, actually, not starting with the fasting example, but if you look at the cloth example, clearly the cloth is needing to be patched. So we're not really throwing anything out, right? We're actually patching something with the idea of keeping the older garment. So in that example, if Judaism is the old garment and the gospel is the unshrunk piece of cloth or something like that, or Christianity, in that example alone, Judaism doesn't get tossed out if it's the old garment. Instead, it gets patched up, right? So that's inconsistent with what many pastors would say, is that Christianity is here to replace Judaism. Judaism is this old cloth that needed to be tossed out. Christianity is this new cloth that needs to be brought on the scene. Wait a minute. Yeshua doesn't say that we're throwing out the old garment. He says we're patching it, at least in the example. And then when we move on to the second example about the wine and old wineskins and things like that, again, same principle is applied. The new wine isn't put into old wineskins, but the solution isn't to throw out the old wineskins. It's to put new wine into fresh wineskins, or to condition them. In one of the other examples, I think it's in Luke's rendering, if we prepare the old wineskins, that is to say, condition them to receive the new wine, then again, we're able to preserve the wineskin and the new wine without destroying both the wine and the wineskin. In fact, Yeshua hints at that. He says, if the skins will burst and the wine is spilled and the skins are destroyed, right? So that's a bad thing if the new wine goes in and the old wineskins burst, right? As if Christianity is incompatible with Judaism, right? As if Judaism is this old wineskin that's going to be destroyed if we try to fit Christianity into it.